Welcome to the show, man.
Happy to be here.
This is episode 001.
I feel so honored.
And I am super pumped by this. Actually, what an incredible day. We're out here having a cup of coffee, talking about how to be an unbreakable man, and that's what the name of this show is. Such a good day. So let's dive right into your story as a man. Let's start your childhood and then walk me through how you've become the successful man you are today, right? Like kind of we'll start there and we'll just unpack.
All right, let's unpack it.
That's the story. I love it.
So as a man, I was raised into an environment that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Like, I really don't have a lot of complaints in a sense of how I was raised. I was raised in a middle-class white family. My father was in the military. We had everything that we could ever want, right? So, I mean, like, I didn't have a lack in a sense of the materialistic things. Mm-hmm. My trauma, I guess you can say, that centers around that was that my father was an emotionless man. So the military did that to him. Going to war and doing those things had that effect on him.
Yeah, so he's got stuck in the warrior.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
And even more so, I mean, he battled really intense anxiety to the point where, no one's ever diagnosed him, but I can now experience what I've experienced from the generational thing, which I'll get into, but it was OCD. He was attached to the schedule and how he had to do things, and a lot of the things that he wanted to do didn't have anything to do with spending time with us. And I've since reconnected with him, and he's gotten more into his emotion, and he can see now, like much better, right? Hindsight's 20/20. But that was probably the hardest thing growing up, is that I didn't understand what love was when it came to intimacy and care and compassion and tenderness. Like, I didn't have a lot of that.
How does that experience shaped you?
Well, for me, I became very emotionally numb. So things I didn't know about myself, for instance, when I was 5 years old, I was chewing my fingers down to the nub. I'm 5.
Yeah.
Right? I don't understand why, and I didn't understand then. And not only was I doing that, I was doing all sorts of different compulsions.
Yeah.
And at the time, again, no idea why. And then once I got into ninth grade or so, dial-up internet was getting a little bit more advanced. We went into broadband, right? No more AOL and all that kind of stuff. So then high-speed internet came into play.
Yeah.
And again, I had access to a computer, and I had a private downstairs basement, and I had a computer, and I'm 14, and what did I start finding is pornography. So I started to become very attached to watching this thing because I'm a horny, kid at that point. I have no idea. And it became.
I don't think any man can relate to this right now. Right? You're telling me I can find naked women for free all over this thing called the internet? Oh my God.
And you can find much more now.
Yes.
But at the time, it was revolutionary, right? All in the sense of like what you could find, the information you could find. And my parents did the best that they could to block the things that, I shouldn't be looking at. But I'm a pretty smart guy, and I was a pretty smart kid.
Yeah.
So I got myself very wrapped up into that.
Yeah.
And that, to me, now that I see it, it's like, well, I didn't know how to experience intimacy or love because my parents didn't really show that with each other. The most I ever saw them do when we were in high school was hold hands on the way to church, right? So and maybe a pet kiss, right? So there wasn't a lot of like compassion inside of it.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like escaping through that, but also to go back to chewing my fingers when I was 5 years old, I had a lot of anxiety as a kid.
Do you know what you had anxiety about?
Well, now I understand it to be karmic. Now I understand it to be past lives and bringing that into this space of having this unhealed trauma from past lives that was karmic.
Yeah.
Only reason why I would be 5 years old chewing my fingers in the nub and having compulsions, right? And it feels right to me at this point.
Yeah.
So once I got through high school, I get into college, like porn gets worse. I start having, something called porn-induced erectile dysfunction, which is literally you start rewiring the neurochemistry of your brain to be aroused by a computer and not by a person. So,
Yes.
and there's something called escalation with porn where like you'll start with watching regular heterosexual porn, right? And then it turns into all sorts of different genres that you never knew.
Yep.
And it's just the escalation because of the dopamine hit of wanting to see more and more and more to get to a certain point.
Yeah.
So I'm getting to the point now where I'm in my mid-20s where I've literally, the things that I'm watching are so much of an illusion compared to what reality is that I've disconnected myself even more from love, right? So it's like I didn't experience it this way. I'm looking for it in a way in which I'm never going to get returned back to me. And I'm actually starting to get with my ex-wife, newsflash, ex-wife, right?
Yep.
Where I really do, like, for what I understood love to be, I loved her, like, the most I could ever love somebody.
Yeah.
But I also hid the parts of me, I hid my shadows away from her, so she fell in love with a part of me. It's not like a lot of times people say it's a projection of me. No, it was really a part of me. It just wasn't all of me.
Right.
And anybody that's been an addict at all, whether it's porn or drugs or alcohol or whatever else, there are certain behaviors that are synonymous with it, which is lying, manipulating, controlling, because you're doing all these things to protect the addiction so that the person doesn't find out.
Yeah, and what's underneath that, so that somebody might understand, because I've experienced that from other people, and I can't say for me personally. Maybe I take that back. I probably have had that experience with pornography with my wife. Where it's like you're feeling disconnected. And then you kind of like wait till they're gone and sneak off. That was like sort of the way it would come through. So like what's underneath that? If you're running, right? What are you running from? Like,
sure,
you've done the work.
Sure, yeah. I mean, once we get into the emotional space, it's shame, it's guilt.
Yeah.
It's feeling inadequate, right? And incapable.
Yeah.
And that was only compounded by actually trying to being intimate with my ex-wife, right? So I already feel like I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
And then I've done this thing. I must have mapped this whole this whole thing. This is what I mapped.
Yeah.
This habit, sexual desire, or what I thought it would be. Watch pornography, get lost in all that, have the ultimate ecstasy, right, of that feeling, and then instantly after feeling guilty about doing it because it's not my partner, and then feeling shame that I'm a bad person, that I can't be that.
Yeah.
That I must have done tens of thousands of times.
Wow. And
Right?
was that like cycle like right away?
Oh, yeah. It was on repeat.
Yeah.
Right? And then now we're talking about something called an identity loop, right? So in an identity loop, you have a belief.
Yeah.
That belief then will stimulate an action. That action, the result of the action, also reinforces the belief. So I feel like I'm not good enough for my ex-wife sexually.
Yeah.
I watch porn instead. Because I watch porn, I have porn-induced erectile dysfunction. Because I have that, I can't actually perform with my wife. So I'm stuck in this loop, right?
You've created the identity loop, and it's self-fulfilling, and there's evidence at the end of the day. And
tens of thousands of case studies.
Tens of thousands of case studies. And you're saying, yes, I'm getting this evidence, I'm getting this evidence, I'm getting this evidence. And I have done that for me with a paycheck tens of thousands of times of I am an inadequate as a provider. I try to figure it out. I go out and I isolate. And then she asks, how was your day? What did you work on? And then I get angry. I get triggered by that, thinking that I'm not providing.
Yeah.
And then I shut down mentally, emotionally, and I don't get what I consider good work done, which is work is just work. It's simple, right?
Yeah.
But then the results wouldn't come at the back end of the work. There wouldn't be sales. There wouldn't be whatever, like something tangible to say and say, oh, I've done this.
Yep.
And then the shame cycle would continue. And
Yep.
the way I would show up then in that would be I would come home and be like, I worked on this thing, or I had this revelation, or I would tell her about like my spiritual revelations, when in reality she didn't give a fuck about my spiritual revelations. She cared about, hey man, like we got 3 kids. When are you going to bring a paycheck home?
Yeah.
Like when are you going to create something that's tangible that I can use to go buy groceries with?
Yeah.
Like I don't care about your emotional revelations, which is so funny because I'm like, I care about them. I think it's equaling this, but that, but it's the same thing. It's the same cycle. We get caught in that spin cycle.
Yeah. And one of the things, and fast forward a little bit of like what I do with my clients is a lot of times I work as I don't even know what to say. I work as, at this point, a consciousness coach, peak performance coach, a business coach. Like, I do a lot of different things.
Yeah,
a personal freedom guide.
Yeah, and you work with, a combination of, if I understand correctly, men and entrepreneurs and anyone who's trying to create something in this world.
Yep.
Okay.
So helping them with the personal freedom, which if we were to put that in a general space, it is freedom from your ego, right?
Yes.
And allowing your soul to be the driver of the ship.
Yeah.
And then also, how can we then, from that point, heal the distortions, which is going to be the shame, the guilt, the bad habits, the things that are causing you all sorts of destruction in your life, then channeling that energy into things that are productive, into work, and then simplifying profit growth so that they actually grow their business simultaneously.
Yes.
So essentially, I say you can have it all. Like, people think you have to sacrifice your soul for success, and like, you don't have to.
I like that. Ooh, I want to sit with that for you don't have to sacrifice your soul for success. How many guys are dealing with that? Right? Like,
a lot.
They've sold their soul. They're the thing that gives them the passion, the fire for the success. Yeah. And I actually have a coaching call later today from a guy who's affluent, has achieved everything in his life, and he's fucking miserable.
Yep.
And I love that. You don't have to sell yourself for success.
Yeah, I always tell people, like, money doesn't bring happiness, but it does buy a lot.
It buys a lot.
It takes care of a lot of things, but if it's not purposeful, then there's always going to be that lack, because purpose and fulfillment go together, right?
Yeah.
So with that, what I was talking about, the identity loop, we're going to trace.
We're going to just keep jumping around. It's great.
Is that a lot of coaches, and this is neither good nor bad because it can work in this way, in that identity loop, they'll go after the action. So, for instance, if I were going to work with somebody that was going to work that way, they would say, well, you just need to stop watching the porn. So let's fortify your phone and all these things to stop watching the action, right?
They try to take the environment and separate themselves from the environment. This is like the classic version of me deleting Instagram for 3 weeks, only to find out, I need to actually connect with people.
Yes.
Damn it, I have to go back.
And now you're faced with the shadow again, or you're faced with the experience to actually heal from the shadow if you see it that way.
Yes.
So it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
Like, you can do that for 90 days and see a lot of good results, but guess what? I still feel like I'm not worthy of it.
Yeah.
Right? So then once I go there, well, what's going to happen is I might start watching porn, but maybe I'll get attached to alcohol now. Maybe I'll get attached to drugs. Maybe I'll get because the perception is still a misperception. It's still not aligned with truth.
Yeah.
So I work a lot with clients of trying to find their misperceptions, aligning their perceptions to truth, and then creating new actions from that perception.
Where's the wedge? Like, how do you get in through the blockade of the psyche?
Well, I've been gifted
Yeah.
with a very strong intuitive BS meter.
Okay.
And I always try and tell my clients, it's not that it's not about honesty, it's about truth.
Yeah.
Because you can be honest with yourself as a way to hide from the truth. You can sit here and tell me.
Yes.
You can sit here and tell me a story, and 90% of the story is how great you're doing. And then the 10% is like, but you know what? There's that little thing, And I'm like, no, that little thing is the 90% that you're acting like the 10%. That's the thing that's holding you back.
Dude, you're blowing my mind right now. I need to chew on that. You can be honest, but you're not telling the truth.
Yeah, you can be honest with yourself as a way to hide from the truth.
Holy fuck. That's so powerful, because I called my son out on something about, I think he was messing with his sister, and I'm like, I knew you were going to do that. And he's like, no, I didn't do that. And he was being honest, but the depth of the truth was he had full intention, because I know my son, because he's 5, and I know when he's about to hit his sister, is he was going to hit his sister, and he had the intention, but trying to call someone out, they run from the truth.
Yeah.
Why that? What? That is so good. But what I love about that, and it hits so hard. Why do you think it's so hard to tell the truth?
Well, there's the shame. Like, we get into that point where, and if we go back to, we talk about the man and the upbringing, right? So let's go back to the societal masculine norms that we know that are actually toxic, which I've actually come to a point now where, sidebar, it's like toxic masculinity. Like, there is no toxic masculinity.
I agree.
Like, masculinity isn't toxic in and itself. There's trauma that's unhealed. There's misaligned behavior. There's all these things, but it has nothing to do with masculine energy. And I really dislike that, like, the media has vilified toxic masculinity. I'm like, there is no such thing.
Okay, so
you're creating an illusion.
I absolutely agree, and I also see that as the reason that this conversation is even happening.
Yeah.
The thing that springboarded me into action to realize my fullest potential and purpose was that conversation. And I was like, wait, men are not toxic. Masculinity is not toxic. We're beautiful motherfuckers.
Yep.
We just haven't lived up to our potential. We've lost initiatory process, ritual process in American society, in the Western culture, and therefore we're just a bunch of grown-ass boys running around still, doing drugs and masturbating and drinking too much alcohol and just kind of being jackasses.
Yeah.
It's time for us to show up as men.
Yep.
And yeah.
So with that, that masculinity,
Yes.
that main one, which is that vulnerability is weakness, right? It's this just distortion of what it actually is, because anybody who knows a true warrior is vulnerable, because vulnerability is the beginning of courage, right? Like, and courage is what's needed to be a warrior, right?
Yes.
So it's like, but we think that we have to say, no, I don't want to appear weak to X, Y, and Z, or to this man, to this man, to this man, because then I'm going to be thought lesser than. And now we're talking about the trick of the ego, which is totally logical, but clearly insane, because it'll sit there and tell you all these different stories about how this is the case, but it's all an illusion. It's all lies. It's all not true. And then that's how it continues to incarcerate you into not being free of who you want to be. So this thing that happens is that we protect the things that we are shameful of, and we feel like we're actually living better because of it.
Yeah.
But I use an analogy with this, is that, and this is an emotional baggage analogy, but like, you can run as fast as you want to run with a 50-pound sack on your back.
Yeah.
But eventually, you're going to come to a halt and a crawl, and you're not going to be able to go very far, right? But our ego tricks us to think that we got to just keep running with this 50-pound sack. Well, alternatively, if you would take the time to say, okay, I want to learn how to set this sack down, and then I'm going to run, you will surpass that person.
Yes.
You'll lose in the beginning, right?
Yep.
In theory, right? But then you'll just immediately catch up and surpass him, and even more so, you might turn around and want to help that person up.
Yes.
Hey, man, just put the sack down. You don't have to hold the sack anymore, right?
I love that, because that is absolutely the shadow warrior mentality. Everybody get on my back. I got you. I'm going to be the hero. It's like, I mean, that's really what the shadow warrior is, the hero. They're the one that's going to run headlong into battle without actually understanding their own personal vulnerabilities, their own strengths and weaknesses, understanding their enemy, or if there is a proverbial enemy, and how that's going to affect their actions and reactions. And like, they don't think ahead. They just want to get the accolades and these things. So they carry the wounds, they carry the trauma. When we're talking about emotions, they're carrying this baggage for years and years and years, thinking, I can outwork this pain. Yeah. I can outwork this by going out there and getting more money, having sex with more women, buying more cars, whatever. Yeah.
And when is more ever enough?
Right.
You know? It's a never-ending trick of the ego that you have to achieve to feel worthy of who you are.
So does the man who is going through this cycle, does he stop this cycle when he announces to himself that there's an underlying pain that he's running from? Or is there something different?
Yes, in a sense of accepting. So
okay.
I have something I call 3 keys to speed, and it works with everything. You want to expel trauma, you need to accept that you have trauma, then you need to seek to understand why you have trauma, and then you need to forgive the trauma. Yep. You want to level up, right? You need to accept that you need to level up, that you need to change. Then you need to understand how to change. Then you're probably going to have to forgive yourself for not changing fast enough in your own mind, right?
Yes.
It is these 3 things. And too many times, the forgiveness part is always the hardest part, because it's hard for people to understand how to forgive themselves and how to forgive others.
Absolutely.
Definitely how to forgive themselves. How to forgive others is a lot easier. But the thing that's maddening about any time that you want to do this, because it's a blend of the spirituality of like, okay, I can actually come into a space of expunging the shadow, or expunging the shadow, right? And saying, okay, this is a very ethereal spiritual thing, but then I still have to remap my subconscious or my conscious behaviors into my subconscious, and that's a repetitive, grounded, very 3D thing that you have to do.
Yes.
And that's the biggest thing that happens when I'm working with my clients, is that I start them 3D. I'm going to use that, and then 5D is intuition. So I start them 3D, and then I used to have this, I'll tell you this as well. I used to have this visualization that I was speaking up here and they're up here and I'm going to bring them up to me. And I realized that the ego was tricking me in that as well. So I'm like, no, it's here. I'm trying to collapse time for them, right? So it's ahead, but it's not better than, right? So it's like, okay, I'm going to bring them here to collapse time, but then I'm got to bring them back down to earth again.
Yes.
Like, I can't bring you out of this without bringing you back down.
Yeah.
And sidebar, but also has to do with it, is that I ran into somebody the other day and I was talking to him. And his deflection of being honest with himself and not telling the truth was that he kept telling me he was conscious. So when I was talking to him about things, and I wasn't trying to coach him, we were just talking on a higher level, I guess you could say, in a sense of a conscious level. Let's just say a conscious level.
Yeah.
Again, ego flowing in the higher conscious level. And I was trying to just talk to him about shadows, because I was actually talking a little bit about my own addiction and stuff like that, but he would not know. He was like, no, I'm conscious. Like, it's not a big deal. I was like, bro, like, when you're conscious, it's harder. Like, why are you telling me that that doesn't mean it's easier? Like, when I was blissfully and painfully ignorant at the same time.
Absolutely.
Right? I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
So there was a hopeless feeling. There was a lot of like, well, this is just the way it is. Like, all of those things.
Yeah.
But once I took the red pill and came out and came out of the matrix, now I'm like, oh, now I have the duality of what was to what is.
Yes.
And I always say sometimes I'm on the verge of either dementia or reality, and I teeter these lines back and forth.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing about being conscious, is that I can look out and see where we're at right now, and I can say tapas and a bar, like, cool. Basically, you're just selling food to us at a higher price, where I could just go and grow that and do it with seeds and not have to pay anything, right? So what's the point of you, right? I can get into that space if I want to, but the reality is there, right? So I can't just discredit it as not being real,
right?
Even though ethereally it's not real.
Yes.
All right, so then you sit in this duality the entire time, and you realize that the next growth edge is that, again, we choose to be here.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what happens, like, I chose to be here.
Yes.
So I can't keep discrediting the tapas bar over there, because I'm choosing to sitting in front of it right now.
Yes.
Right.
So walk me. I'm gonna backtrack us to becoming conscious.
Yes.
As a man, right? And this is for anybody, but you're going through this cycle of shame, action, react. We'll call it reaction. It's not even action. It's just reaction. And we were just in the spin cycle. You were in a loop. You have a moment where you kind of put the wedge in the cycle, and it's like everything comes to stop, right?
Yeah, I didn't put the wedge though.
Okay. Something happens, right? There's always like a moment, like when you have to see it. Generally, it's when things are falling apart.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I didn't put the wedge.
Okay, there was a wedge put.
Yes,
there was a wedge.
It was put there for me,
given unto you by the universe,
which I didn't see as a gift at the time, right?
Yes, called "I had a business failure." Talk me through that. So when you became conscious.
Yeah. So, So, once I was with my ex-wife, and for the first 2 years or so, I stopped watching porn so much. Like, I actually said in my mind, I was like, this woman healed me. Of course, that's not the case, but, like, it did for that amount of time. And then after the 2-year mark, things start getting comfortable, and with comfortability comes back old habits, and I get back into the habits. And I also I'm a former bodybuilder, so I also got into a bodybuilding world, and if you're willing to put a needle in your butt, you're willing to put anything into your mouth. So I got really wrapped up into drugs.
Got you.
Right? So now it's like, oh, I feel unworthy here. Now I'm taking drugs to manufacture joy, right? Through another thing. When you're taking drugs like MDMA, like, feel great on it, and then the next 2 days you're depressed. So, like, now I'm, like, literally making myself bipolar, like, just through this process, right? It's like every weekend I'm partying with drugs. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday I feel like crap. Thursday I'm starting to come back to, oh, let's go and do drugs again. Now it's like this cycle the entire time.
Yeah.
So essentially what happened was that my wife didn't even recognize who I was anymore, right? I mean, she literally started to tell me she wasn't in love with me anymore. She didn't know who I was anymore. That caused a lot of problems. Eventually, I was, again, it came out about my pornography addiction. She had known. Like, let's be 100. Like, her intuition.
Yeah.
And I had lied about it multiple times and covered it up. And she chose to believe the lie, at least accept the lie, right? And enough so that we stayed together. And then finally, I remember this day. We were leaving the House of Gains, the gym I used to train out of, and she holds my hand, and we get to the car. And she grabs my phone. And guys, if you're listening and you have a porn addiction, incognito mode does not hide porn like you think it does, because if you do it repetitively, it'll still predict what you want to search.
Yep.
So she goes in incognito mode, she goes to hit search, and then like my last 10 searches of porn pops up.
Yep.
This is how much denial I was in. I denied it 3 times.
Yeah.
Like Peter from the Bible. Like, I said it wasn't me. She's like, it's right here. I'm like, it's not me. It's your phone. It's not me. You're either going to lie to me or I'm going to leave you right now. Okay, it's me, right? And then I just started breaking down crying. So, like, whenever I tell this story, people always think that, like, I was, like, courageous or something. I came out about it. No, but I was punched in the mouth, essentially, for me to wake up.
Yes.
Right? So after that, she decided to hang out for about 9 months.
Yep.
And then she decided to leave. Well, this is what happened. I went through the process. I went to a sex therapist. I went to an anxiety therapist. I went through a 90-day no nothing, which is what they want you to do, especially when you've been doing this for 16 years. So it's like a reprogram, right?
Yeah.
And then I came out of it, and about 4 or 5 months out of it, I was starting to function normally again. Like, me and my ex-wife had sex. I didn't have to use Viagra or Cialis, which I was using, right, to try and compensate for feeling that way.
Yeah.
But what I didn't do is get rid of the lying and the manipulating and the controlling.
Yes.
So my ego said, I'm so proud of you. You got over porn addiction, da-da-da-da-da, right? But I was still doing the same behaviors that I had mapped into there that I did not become aware of.
Yes.
So when she left, when she decided to leave, I spent about a month blaming her, victim mode, and then one day, I was just sitting there. I just got my head chills when this came in because I remember how powerful this was. And I was sitting, I was meditating. I picked up meditating about 3 months before she left.
Okay. What year is this?
2017?
2017, okay.
2017, 2018, something like that.
Yeah.
I started meditating, and then just this thing came over me. It was like this energy rushed down to me and said, what would happen if you started blaming yourself? Right? And I said, but it's not my fault, in my head, right? And then this is what came.
Yeah.
It's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. I said, what the hell? It was the first time that I really recognized that there was a voice inside of me that wasn't my brain, that wasn't my thoughts, that was speaking through me and to me simultaneously.
I want to like throw my hands up and run around because that when you become conscious, there is like this absolute truth to the universe. You are now responsible.
Yep.
Able, right? Like, how are you going to respond to the damage you've created for yourself, for your family, for your kingdom?
Yep.
And how are you going to show up now? And you got a lot of work to do. It's like when Scar takes over the Pride Lands.
Yep.
And the Pride Lands are just barren. Like, yeah, the universe is going to help you out and kind of give you some rain, but you got a lot of fixing to do.
Yep. And then we
Fucking
always,
powerful.
talk about me and Liv, is my CEO, that we do this work together. We always say that the gift is on the other side of the shadow, right?
Absolutely.
So why do I have a Stress Strong BS meter now? Because I was the master BSer.
Yes.
Right. So like I know what lying feels like.
Yes.
I know the energy behind it.
Yeah.
I know what I would do with my face. I know the stories I would make. I know how I would deflect. So I didn't know that at the time about myself, but once I started doing the work on myself, I learned about myself to help me understand others, which is what self-awareness is when you actually do the work.
Yes.
So what happened from that point forward is I've always been somebody who can get obsessed with something when I'm really called to do it.
Yeah.
And I got obsessed with learning about the mind, I wasn't really too much into spirituality just yet. It was just very 3D. I was learning about the mind. I was learning about subconscious remapping. I was learning about, like when I would meditate, there was a spiritual source, but I wasn't aware too much of it. It was just more for the anxiety to relief, the 3D stuff, like anxiety relief, stress relief. I was doing it for that reason.
Yeah.
And then once I unlocked the mind, then I started getting what I call downloads from the universe.
Yes.
that voice that was speaking to me and through me was just like, hey, what about this? What about this? What about this? What about this? Hey, try this, try this. And I'm like, and it was almost overwhelming at first. But every single thing that's come to me has been put into practice, and everything that comes to me that I put into practice doesn't always end up in a positive result, or how about this, a result that stimulates joy, but it always results in something that stimulates growth.
I want to stop and appreciate that too, because the process of evolution is not easy. And you touched on it of your process, your 3-step process. Mine is very similar when I'm coaching someone, which is simply just you have to bear witness. Any wound remains a wound until it's witnessed. Mm-hmm. It just is that. In fact, last week, my wife and I, we witnessed something in our relationship that was just sort of dormant. It was sort of down there. It was like sort of this unconscious bias towards each other in a certain context. And it was like that bubbled to the surface, and I was just like, I was an angry banshee for like a day and a half.
Yeah.
And I was so pissed at her, and she was so pissed at me. But it really wasn't. It was over something so just absolutely benign, which is hilarious. But then when we finally got down to it, and you become responsible.
Yep.
Right? You have to accept, you witness, you accept, and then you forgive. And what I've been doing with guys and myself is actually surrendering to the shadow.
Yep.
And that creates integration.
Yep.
And that's where you become both conscious and integrated.
Yep.
And that's powerful. And it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not and that's what you just touched on. It's not. Yeah. This is not an easy path.
Well, I always say the acceptance is it's the resistance point.
Yes.
Right? It's like you will, once you can accept, then like a whole new world opens up for you.
Yes.
But just like I denied it 3 times, right? Yes. Guys will sit in denial. All humans will, not just guys.
Yeah.
But if we add on that like protector, provider, provisionary, all that on top of it, we will not admit that we're not good enough.
Yes.
Or not admit the thoughts that tell us that we're not good enough.
Yes.
And we will resist that so much, and then again, that just ends up in all the self-sabotage, all the pain, all the lack of love. It prevents you essentially from being fully seen, fully loved, and fully heard, right?
Yes.
Which is what we're trying to all be.
Yeah, yeah. So how did you heal?
So it started with starting to actually mentally understand, right? So this is where if I'm going through this 3 steps, right? I accepted.
Yeah.
I accepted after being told, like forced to accept, right?
Of course, and that's part of it, right? It's like sometimes as guys, like your wife needs to leave you, your business needs to fall apart. You know, like you make an investment that is like kind of dumb, and you lose all your money. It happens.
Yep.
Sometimes you got to get banged over the head.
That's for sure.
We're stubborn beasts.
So the understanding process for me is obviously how we're getting to the healing is that I started learning about the brain, I started learning about the mind, then I started integrating these downloads, and then I started to actually create a relationship with the Creator, right, with God, which I had rejected because I was raised Catholic, so like the idea of God in Catholicism and my idea of God are completely different. Well, maybe not completely. There are great things in Catholicism on the positive, loving side, but the whole fear and hell and everything else, that's not it.
A metaphysical place that you can go to when you're after this life.
This will be the first time I ever publicly announced this. I'm going to be writing a booklet that's this upcoming year called The Belief in Hell is Keeping You in Hell. Can't wait to do it.
Oh, I'm excited to read that.
So with that, so I start getting a more understanding of what my relationship was.
Yes.
And then by just accepting that I wanted a relationship, I then was opened up to different channeled works like the Law of One, like A Course in Miracles, a lot of different channeled works that are coming from, again, if we get too ethereal, godlike beings that are coming in, right?
Yep.
To let us know that we're all God, by the way. So I say godlike beings, and we're sitting here as God.
Yep.
And so is this window, if anybody really cares.
Yep. And everybody passing by.
Everything we see.
Everything.
And once that happened, a lot of healing started to happen.
Yeah.
Because I had an abandonment wound, right? And this abandonment wound of my ex-wife leaving me. But then I realized that I'm everything, and how can I be abandoned by everything, right? I can't.
Yes.
Like I can't be abandoned by anything that is everywhere.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, that's a new perception. Now we're talking about perceptions, right?
Yes.
So now we get to perceptions. And then I was like, oh, okay, so now I'm learning about spiritual evolution. Well, what if prior to this incarnation, I designed all of these distortions and challenges and experiences and everything else? What if that's the case? And although that might not be the case, I believe that to be the case. Why? Because it's the last level of healing from victimhood. How can I blame anything but myself if I programmed all of this to happen for myself?
If you're just listening to the audio, I am squishing my face with mind-blowing enthusiasm because it's so fucking true.
Yeah,
it is so, and it's funny you say I literally had this epiphany today about all of the problems I've had, quote unquote problems, right?
Yep.
Like these perceived problems that I've had to this date, because I'm going through a great transformation in my own personal well-being and in my own personal psyche and my own personal how I show up in the world. And this isn't a perfect manifestation of that, which is like, oh, I'm putting myself out there on audio and video and these things and like talking about these subjects. And this, like, I would have never considered this like a year ago, 2 years ago. Like, I always wanted to, but I was like, oh, I'm scared. And it was literally that, what you just described, which is like, yeah, like you gave you this so that you could then teach others in the same realm what you experienced so that you don't have to make any shit up.
Yep.
Like, that's the thing. It's like, you don't have to make anything up. You just teach you. Like, what lessons did you go through? And then that's going to resonate with other, because all of us are that which is universal source. Yep. And we're all going through the same experience. And we're just trying to get through it. Yep. We're just trying to understand. And so good.
And again, this is I'm talking in a lot of like matter of fact, as if I'm like perfect at this. I'm not. So disclaimer, right? I'm still human. I'm still living this experience.
Yes.
But like, let's go with another thing that healed me. I used to be very judgmental. And like, if you're judgmental of others, you're definitely judgmental of yourself, right? Well, now I just see you as me. So, like, just by seeing you as me, that takes away from my prejudices, that takes away from my judgments, that takes away from all these different things that would limit my connection with you.
Yes.
And now I can just look at you as a brother, as an extension of me, as an extension of this whole thing.
Yes.
And then now I'm not so worried about what am I going to say, what am I going to do. So then now I start connecting with people at a much deeper level just because I'm not judging them, right?
Yes. And you're not judging yourself.
And I'm not judging myself, right? And then that allows me to hold grace and space for all sorts of people.
Yes.
And it also allows me to say, cool, I'm going to hold grace, but at a distance as well.
Yes.
I love you. And also fix, you need to work on some things. Yeah, let's not say fix.
And that's okay.
We need to work on some things.
I was going to say, and it's okay to have boundary. That's super important.
Yeah.
It's okay to have boundaries.
And then the last thing that came through that really helped me with the healing was a grounding statement that I actually regurgitate to a lot of my clients that end up going through something traumatic and now they're trying to work through it.
Yeah.
And this was a download. Said I was doing the best I could with the knowledge that I had.
Yeah.
And like, it did two things for me. One, it allowed me to heal, to say that really was the best. I could have not done any better. Yeah. Like, that's all it was. The knowledge that I had motivated me to learn more.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, so if I ever want to not be in that space again, I need to learn as much as I can. So it was a duality.
Yeah.
And that was I feel like it was like the last thing that really took away from the backpack.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not that I'm not building some emotional baggage as I continue to live my life, right?
Yes.
It's just never going to get to 50 pounds again.
Yeah.
Like, it might get to 5 or 10 before I'm like, hold up, something ain't right.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
And now I'm going to say, now I'm more inquisitive about what isn't right.
Yes.
And now through my own practices, I have grounding statements. I have something I do with my clients called the Invincible Shield, which is like defining my authenticity. I can turn around, I can look at it, I can say, oh, I'm out of alignment right now because I'm wanting to be compassionate and I'm being judgmental. So for me to stop feeling this way, I need to lean on compassion and empathy. How could I see this experience? How could I see this person I'm judging through the lens of love? Right?
So can I
Yes.
add to that? So I absolutely agree 100%. And here's the interesting thing. It's as if we're all carrying this backpack, right? This proverbial like energetic backpack. And sometimes that 5-pound weight's not even your shit. Yep. Sometimes somebody else puts something in there. And for you to have more consciousness, which is simply just awareness around energy and like the way you're feeling, the way you're experiencing this reality. Are you lying? Are you not lying? You know, are you running? Are you whatever? When you become more conscious, you recognize, okay, this is mine, or is this mine? And then you can differentiate, is this actual ego? Is this shadow, which is different? Is this inner child? Or is this somebody else's shit? And if it is somebody else's shit, now it's like, oh, I know I have these processes to release this and allow myself to clear. And so you can reconnect and align to something greater than yourself, like a higher self, what I call your unbreakable self. That's what this whole thing is, right? So like you're actually guided by something higher than yourself so you can move forward and just release that baggage. Because Here's the thing, and this is like a misconception of healing. I think in the healing world, well, there's two misconceptions. One is that you're always broken, like the personal development gurus and the healers out there.
That's the 12-step method.
Right. Makes you think that you're always broken, which is I disagree with.
Hi, I'm Zach, and I'm an addict.
Yeah, right. Which I totally disagree with. But in the same sense, there's always there's a new level. Like if you perceive something, you want something, higher self gives you opportunity through desire. Like I think we talked about this earlier. But then your ego gets in play of like, well, I'm not that, I'm not this, and that. And then it's like you have to level up. So it's like this game we constantly play of like, like I would like to have a larger business. What does that look like? It looks like this, and then your ego comes in and it like kind of gets that juicy feeling of like, yeah, I want that. Yeah. And then you have to literally shed yourself through these processes, become more conscious and aware, allow yourself to shed these old skins, and then you become a greater version of yourself. Yep. And I love that.
Yeah, there's there's one thing that you said that I kind of want to talk a little bit more about, which is like the ego and the shadow and the inner child.
Yeah.
I would argue in this space that
Please
the
do.
shadow and the ego are one and the same. That what happens is that before we become conscious, we are essentially our ego. So everything that happened inside of that space, the ego was the driving force. And either the ego is the driving force from karmic stuff that's coming through and then just using that same karmic energy, or it's coming from the experience that we're actually creating inside of ourselves, inside of that. And then once we become conscious, the ego says, cool, oh, you're conscious, that's cool. All right, so now you're going to start building that stuff. Okay, that's cool. Well, I'm going to go back and grab that thing that you used to do, and I'm going to throw that in your face real quick, and I'm going to see if that's going to fish hook you back into me. So the ego is a shapeshifter like that. So if I were going to use these two voices, you have the inner critic, which is the ego, which is everything.
Yes.
Other than the what I call the inner guidance system as a non-threatening word of saying like the Holy Spirit or your intuition or whatever else is always saying the same thing. Love, equal, love everybody. Everyone's equal. Forgive yourself. Be courageous. And then the ego's like, be prideful. You don't need any help. Fuck that other guy. Like judge that other person. But then let's say you want to level up. Let's say you want to do something, right? You want to start your own business, right?
Yeah.
Cool. I want to start my own business. That's coming from your inner guidance system. Ego. Well, you don't know enough to start your own business. Inner guidance system. No, I'm totally capable. I know what I'm doing. Thank you. Well, you remember that last time you tried to start your own business? You remember how terrible that was? Yeah, but that was the last time. I think I learned my lesson that time. That's cool. Well, what do you think? What about your wife? Your wife's over telling you that you're not making any money. So, like, why don't you just stop doing what you're doing and find something to make money? So the inner guidance system is always rigid, and the ego is like story. Again, totally logical, clearly insane. Story. And then also uses its past victories to bring in trauma flashes to try and keep you back into that space. Yeah. So I see the ego as being, in the way of what you're talking about, ego uses inner child, ego uses trauma, ego uses these things because ego was the initiator of a lot of these things.
So you're describing ego as shadow. I feel that ego and inner child essentially remain the same, where it's like a want. Right, and that keeps us like in comfort, and we're afraid to move forward essentially. And for me, the way I see shadow is like essentially like if there's shadow, there's light, and there's sort of like two poles of the same essence, and so we have to both navigate. It's like ego is like this is the way I think of it. Yeah, like ego is like the hero, right? Trying to move through the journey, through the lessons, trying to understand. But then the hero ultimately kind of levels himself up. He has to release his old ways, his old patterns. But he also has to face his shadow, which in this case could be like Luke Skywalker is like the ego, like vessel, the ego. And then the shadow aspect of that is that which is Darth Vader. And the light aspect of that is the Jedi, like the essence of the Jedi. So it's like that's kind of the way I sort of view it. It's almost like 3 in 1, but in the same sense, it's all one.
Yeah, it's all you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we're all like playing it out.
Yeah.
But I like what you got. So
go ahead.
I was gonna say, I want to go back to your story because I want to tie together, your healing journey how you're showing up now in the world, and then what you're doing, both for yourself, but also for men, for business people, for entrepreneurs.
Sure.
And then obviously dive them into your program.
Yeah. So with that, once I got through the process of starting to be repetitive, and that's one of the things, like something I tell my clients sometimes, like, okay, what's the perception? The perception's wrong. Cool. Now we're going to come up with an empowering perception.
Yes.
I'm going to use something super general. I am powerful, right? Whatever.
Yes.
Okay, now I want you to go on a 20-minute walk, and you're going to say I am powerful the entire time while you're on a 20-minute walk.
Yeah.
And their ego will say, that's stupid. That's not going to work. What are you talking about? I was like, just humor me and do it for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
3 weeks later, bro, I think I'm starting to believe those things I'm saying to myself. I'm like, because that's how this works. Right, so there's that remapping. So that's what I did. I did a lot of remapping. I ended up going to a new gym because I didn't want to be at the old gym. For 25 minutes, I would be saying, I love having sex with women repetitively in my car to start to get over this fear that had been mapped into me, right, of intimacy and all these things.
Yep.
I started being very, very, very intentional with a morning routine, and a part of that was setting intentions on behavior that I wanted to be.
Yeah.
A lot of times, the guys that I work with or anybody I work with, they can't answer the question, what do you want? And like, how can you have a direction if you don't know what you want? So a lot of times that question
we could talk for an hour about that.
A lot of times that question is overwhelming as well, because I'll ask them what they want, and they're trying to think, because they're entrepreneurs, they're trying to think of like their ultimate vision. I'm like, no, that's cool. What's something that you want that you would like to have in your life right now that you feel like you don't? And then we can get to a point where it's like, well, I would like to have a better relationship with my wife, right? Yeah. Or I would like to go to the gym a little bit more, or I would like to, stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
I'm like, that's the stuff that we can work with. Okay, now you know what you want. Now let's clearly define what you want, and now let's start setting intentions towards what you want.
Yeah.
And we were talking about this before we come on the podcast. I always say the intention is the fuel for the soul to drive the mind in the direction that you want to go, right?
Say that again. The
intention is fuel for the soul to drive the mind and the body in the direction that you actually want to go.
So it's like setting a potential.
Free will choice.
Yeah, so
right?
it sets a potential, and that creates the direction.
Yep. And there's the weight of intention to desire in your mind. I'm really big with words. So like you can say like, I respect you, or you can say I honor you. You can just say that, and honor just like sits like a lot deeper inside of you. Or I can say I'm committed to you, or I'm devoted to you. Ooh. Devotion sits really hard. It's the trunk of mind that it sits in, that it actually activates the soul to upreach towards that word. So intention does that for me. I can say I desire to be better, or I intend to be better. So
or
what
I
I'll
choose
have
to be better, or I am better.
Well, that's a big one too, is the choice thing.
Yeah.
And
I want to be versus I choose to be. Similar example.
So I'll have them set intentions, and it's just becoming aware of your intention. What do you intend to do?
Yeah.
And sometimes setting intentions isn't enough. It's setting an intention with an action item to it.
Okay.
So like blending an intention with a SMART goal. I intend to go to the gym at 5 o'clock and give my best effort. So now we're being like really, like it's at 5, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm giving my best effort, right? So we're getting really detailed in the intention. Okay. It really helps.
So let me just like challenge that, because I've done that and it didn't help me.
So it's not a one-time thing.
Okay.
Just as anything else.
Or like setting SMART goals. I just felt like I wasn't getting under the root of the issue, which is like, I'm going to like, for me, I was always overdoing it, because underneath everything there was never enough. And I kept telling myself, but I didn't recognize that until I went through a deep, deep healing process and a ceremony, and recognizing I was overworking, overeating, doing everything. So I would set SMART goals. I'd be like, I'm going to go to the gym 7 days a week. And So
realistic. One.
Right. I guess that's the R. Is that the R?
Yeah, that's the R. But also, it's about, you don't know it's realistic until you can reverse engineer it.
Yeah.
So like, if I'm talking to, like, let's go into the revenue space, and like I'm coaching a guy right now, and I'm like, what's your revenue goal for 2022? He's like $1.5 million in revenue. I'm like, cool. What was revenue last year? $350,000. Okay, we have a gap, right? all right, so let's take 1.5 million. Let's break down what your service is. Let's break down all these things. So we just reverse engineer it back to again, simplify the process.
Yes.
And he finds out that, okay, if I want to make this much money, I need to make this much per quarter. And then to make this much per quarter based off clients, I need this many clients, which is this many leads. That's what I'm saying. So until you actually literally do the work to say, here's a goal, let me break down the goal and make sure it's actually attainable, right?
Yeah.
Then you're just going to be spinning your tires the entire time. At that point, it's just a wish. Right? I wish I could make $1.5 million.
Yeah.
Okay, how? And even better of a question, what would it take? What would it take for me to do this?
Yes.
And then now you can actually start setting some intentions that are realistic.
Yes.
But if we're just throwing them out into the space with no grounded action that can come back to it, it becomes very hard and it becomes very defeating.
What if we achieve the thing that we want and we realize I don't really feel any better?
Well, that always comes down, I don't want to say always, I don't like that word. Typically, that comes down to purpose and also the over-attachment to the outcome, to think that this outcome is going to serve their happiness, which then just robs them of being happy.
Yeah.
A lot of what I do with my clients is I get them to define what happiness is to them right now.
Yeah.
It helped really well for me 2 days ago because I got into a space and then I turned around and I looked at my definition of happiness. It was like, I get to do what I love with the people I love. That's it.
Yeah.
Right? So if I started thinking that, I don't have lack, I don't have this, and that, it's like, wait a second. I literally get to wake up and work with the people I love and do what I love. Like, that makes me the happiest person in the world, right?
Beautiful.
So what happens is this is ego trick of the high achiever, is I'll be happy when I make $1.5 million, right? I'm scheduled to do it 2022. It doesn't happen. Right? Oh man, I must be a terrible entrepreneur. I'm not very good. I'm not worthy of it. Like, my wife should leave me. Like, all this stuff starts coming in. You start self-deprecating.
Yes.
Right? Because you have to get that outcome for you to be happy. Well, guess what happened? You just robbed yourself the entire year of happiness because you are exchanging it there.
Yep.
And some people will rob their entire life of happiness.
Yes.
In this constant rat race for this thing.
Yes.
So it becomes a point in which you have to find out, right? I like journey words. Like, effort is a journey word. Practice is a journey word.
Yeah,
right? It's not an outcome word. Process is a journey word.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally about the journey. And I don't care how many people have to tell you this for you to hear it. It's about the journey. And I'm talking to myself right now. It's about the journey, right? So it's all about what we're doing.
That's why we're having these conversations, is to coach ourselves. That's so
that's
true.
what I love about, I love that I get to do what I do because it is the process of learn, teach, and by teaching, I learn again.
Yes.
And now I'm mapping something repetitively into myself, so it goes into my being through the process.
Yeah.
It's of service and of service to myself.
I love this. Okay, so you go through this entire healing process. You recognize these wounds that you're carrying as a child. That brings you into who you've become. And now you help entrepreneurs. Yep. So walk me through what that looks like in, if you had to give me the...
So the biggest thing that I'll talk about in transitioning to after this as well, but
please.
In generalities, the biggest problem that I have that comes with entrepreneurship is being able to focus and prioritize. Focus and prioritize.
Yeah.
If you look at the
Raising
world,
my hand right now.
right? My phone just fell, but it's like distractions are literally everywhere.
Everywhere.
And inner conflict is created by the distraction. So I actually have been positioning inner conflict as being the biggest time waster that you could ever find.
Yes.
Because we could do some math and I could say, okay, if you're going to spend 2 hours a day in inner conflict, you're going to multiply that by 7, that's 14 hours a week. If I multiply that by 52 weeks, we're getting into a very large number.
Yes.
I'll tell you that I've already done this math, and then if you bring it all the way to the end of your life, you're spending 3 years in inner conflict in yourself. And that's just an average of 2 hours a day. So what would happen if you could just live life without inner conflict? What could you do with three straight years of confidence, clarity, and certainty? What could you do with that?
That alone is worth so much gold.
Yep. So it's the ability to recognize, and this all goes back to choice and free will, is that you're choosing either your suffering or you're choosing, right, to live happy,
Yes.
or you're choosing to be in conflict with yourself.
Yes.
You're always choosing.
Yes.
So if we can empower the fact that it's your free will to choose, and then we can start to break down what you're in conflict about and create
Yes.
clarity through grounding and all these other things.
Yes.
And then through that process, start to align to what is true. Now we're achieving something I call singleness of thought, which is the ability to focus on the things that matter and the voice that's empowering you to be more. So that's kind of the freedom part of it. Inside of that, I've helped clients heal from porn addiction. I've helped clients heal from alcohol addiction, drug addiction. I've helped clients heal their relationship. Sometimes their relationship is, out of wax,
Yes.
and that's causing the conflict that's
Yes.
carrying over into the business, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah, I'll raise my hand and say that was me. Absolutely.
So whatever it is, we
Yeah.
work through the conflict, create exactly who that person is authentically, reveal it, live it, right? And then through that process, now that we have that out of the way, now you can start to accept these really simple business practices that also simplify your business so that you have the belief in yourself, you have the certainty, right? And now I'm giving you a practice to just run with.
I love this.
And then they just
I
churn.
love this.
They churn and
So
go.
so essentially they're dialing in the depth of sensation that they're looking for, which is fulfillment, its purpose, its impact. They're able to tune into their essentially like what is their higher self calling them forward, and you help them put that into context, into a step-by-step process so that they can run forward with it.
Yep, it's practice.
Beautiful.
And once they put it into practice, they start the subconscious remapping, and then they just are. They don't have to try to be anymore.
I love
They're
this.
they just are. They just be.
So your challenge that broke you
Yep,
made you unbreakable.
absolutely.
I love this.
Again, you would never know if you were invincible or unbreakable until you were
Right.
broken, right? Until you can be vulnerable about what you're doing.
And that's the entire point of this conversation. The entire point. All right. So where can the guys find you?
Yeah.
How can they reach out? How can they be part of your program?
Yeah, the best way to do it is just to find me on social media outlets. Zack Blakeney.
Yeah.
I don't know if you'll have it in the show notes or not, but Z-A-C-K,
Yep,
B-L-A-K-E-N-E-Y.
I'll add it to the show notes. Yep.
And also, if you just DM me Invincible, I'll know that they're coming from the Unbreakable podcast. That'll let me know that you would like to have a conversation. And I also want to open up this point, whether you're wanting to be a client or you just want a reflection, it's all open.
Yes.
Like, you don't have to reach out to me if you don't want to be a client. Like, I'm just here to serve in the best way that I can.
Yeah.
And it's just my honor to be able to do so.
I love that. I love that. You put out some good stuff too, brother.
Thank you.
I've been following you for a while. We've been good friends. It's funny. You came in as a client, and now we're just like good friends. This is exactly how I want life to go. So, if you guys want, reach out to Zack, dive into his program. Sounds like you and I might have something brewing up in the new year, which you guys will hear about. And yeah, guys, I love you. As always, stay unbreakable. We're gonna have you again on the show. I can't wait.
It's my honor, man.
Oh, it's so good.
Also want to tell the crowd I love them as well.
Absolutely. All right. We'll see y'all.